You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Friday. We are here doing it even though I said on Twitter that we weren't going to. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I am your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I do want to be upfront with you in the sense of I am going through something at the moment, which is why we almost didn't have a podcast today. I don't know how long this one's going to last, but could use your prayers for those of you who do pray. My grandfather has been intermittent. He's in the hospital in Florida. I'm going down to see him next week. He's in the ICU at the moment, and things are, like I said, intermittent. So if you have prayers, if you can pray, I'd really appreciate it. Next week, I'm still going to try to give you 5. It's going to depend on what happens between now and then, as well as how much I'm able to pre-record. But I wanted to be upfront with you, get that out right now, so that you know kind of the state that I am in, as well as why maybe there might be some intermittence, because I wouldn't be in this position even covering Michigan, or I wouldn't have gone back to Michigan if it wasn't for his support in so many different ways. The most important person in my life. So I do have to open with that. But we are going to talk Jim Harbaugh and all of that and everything that we kind of know at this point, because I think it's all become pretty clear what happened to some degree. We might not know specifics. None of this is firsthand on my end, but nonetheless, they are things that we can discuss. So let's get right into it, because one of the things that I batted off some people on Twitter. Obviously, I'm in no mood today to play with anyone who wants to accuse us of being TMZ or anything like that. Listen, the things that happen, they happen, right? And sometimes it might not be something that an ardent Maize and Blue faithful person wants to hear, right? And things happen as they happen. What we know, and we know this, Jim Harbaugh went to Minneapolis with the firm belief that he was going to be done at Michigan and that he was going to be signing a contract with the Minnesota Vikings when he went. He believed that it was all done. He believed that the interview was basically a formality. That's not exactly how it happened. What we also know is that the Minnesota Vikings had intended on hiring Jim Harbaugh for its next head coaching position. What we do know as well is that the interview was going well from when he arrived, whenever that was, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. But sometime around 3 o'clock, don't know if that's local time there or here, things started taking a turn. And from there, it was clear to both parties that Jim Harbaugh was not going to be the next head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. He, at that time, not at 3, but after the realization, after they concluded, had reached out to Ward Manuel to say, hey, I still am in for Michigan if you will have me. Sorry, my microphone keeps falling here. I don't know why. I am in for Michigan if Michigan will still have me. And Ward said, yes, we will still have you. That is the timeline of events. This is essentially indisputable at this point. What was true on Tuesday when Jim flew from Willow Run Airport in whatever city that's considered, Ypsilanti, Belleville, not really sure, to Minneapolis, was that he was done in his mind as the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. And things changed. I again want to vehemently defend those who reported that, because that was true at the time. Chris Ballas and others were spot on in what was happening at that moment. But just like recruiting or anything else, things changed. And Jim Harbaugh is still the head coach of the University of Michigan. And now we wait to see what happens with his contract in the sense of when he resigns. I'm sure there will be a little bit more of a restructuring to the deal to some degree. That he will, that then it will be that much more official. So, it's been weird for me to see, and this isn't me speaking of myself. This is me looking at the vehemence of people that other people's reporting was incorrect, just because it didn't turn out the way that they said it was supposed to, because it was correct at the time. So I do want to give kudos to those people. I want to give kudos to Chris Ballas and John U. Bacon and Sam Webb and everyone who reported on it. And there were certainly different levels of what they had said was happening. I actually watched the podcast with, which I recommend, Chris Ballas, Doug Skeen, and Angelique Shingelis. And Angelique confirmed everything that Chris Ballas said. If you go and watch Rich Eisen's show, Bruce Feldman confirmed everything that Chris Ballas said. So it is what it is. And you know what? This is, like I said, the last few days is the best situation for Michigan, unfortunately, as it might be. I mean, the best situation would have been that he didn't have any kind of dalliance wanting to go back to the NFL. But maybe it's also a blessing in disguise, assuming that things go well from here on in, if now he kind of has a little bit of trepidation about trying to go back. I would expect that buyout is going to be a bit higher. It's not going to be that friendly. Because here's the thing. The contract that he is operating off of, it was deserved. As much as he might not have liked it, and maybe that, I don't think that necessarily played any kind of role in this, but I'm just saying, the contract that he was operating under, and that he's at this moment, unless he is signed, and we just haven't gotten the announcement yet, that he's operating under was deserved given what had happened, not just in 2020, but even the 2 years previous. Because as much as you can sit there and say, well, he deserves to be, have a much higher contract in 2020 because it was something of an aberration, just those Ohio State games alone and the reluctance to move on from Don Brown when that needed to happen, those of themselves are that's worth the type of deal he ended up getting. And with the way that the athletic department was operating, given the COVID and all of that, the deal just made sense. So it is what it is. And now Michigan has to move on. So let's continue talking about this with the idea of moving on. What Jim Harbaugh has to do, the Herculean task, which I think when we touched on this yesterday, I mean, it's Herculean, but it isn't necessarily. But nonetheless, we'll talk about that momentarily. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, right along live with real-time updates of current games. So don't wait to take advantage of the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, also want to tell you a little something about Get Upside. It's an incredible app that everyone who gets gas needs to know about. My listeners are earning cash back for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just, excuse me. Didn't expect that. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now. Use the promo code SCORE for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first fill up. Cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use the promo code SCORE for 25 cents per gallon or more on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 to $300 a year in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code SCORE to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back in your first tank. That's promo code SCORE. All right, so obviously that Michigan is not in the position that it felt like it was. Let's say December 30th. Heck, even December at 31st at 11:59. Yes, the obviously they lost that game to Georgia, but you had to feel like, all right, things are trending in the right direction. Certainly you didn't expect that Michigan was going to lose Mike Macdonald quite so soon. You knew they were going to lose a lot of players, some of those players that you thought maybe were going to stick around. Vincent Gray and Christopher Hinton are gone, leaving a little bit more of a vacuum on the defensive side of the ball. And now you also probably didn't expect, I certainly didn't, that Sean Nua was going to join Lincoln Riley in Los Angeles. But now Michigan have a defensive line coach in Mike Elston, a favorite son, who is incredible at recruiting, and he's a very good position coach as well. You still need to get a defensive coordinator, and that seems to be next. Based off of just kind of the rumblings that seem to be out there, again, not my firsthand knowledge, it does seem like Jesse Minter, the Vanderbilt defensive coordinator, is one of the guys that is strongly in the mix. You can sit there and say things didn't look good in Vanderbilt, but he also, like Mike Macdonald, was an acolyte under the Baltimore Ravens and came up through there. Last year was his first year in Vanderbilt's obviously the toughest place to try to get wins or do anything of note in the SEC. So hard to put anything on that. Then you also have Larry Foote, especially now that Brian Leftwich did not get the Jacksonville Jaguars head job. So Larry Foote would be another one that certainly could come in. And reports are that Michigan is looking to retain the same defensive scheme, which also I know no one's, again, I mentioned this, I know no one's talking about George Hilo as being a guy who could maybe move up. That wouldn't completely surprise me. Not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me. Some of those other names that I've bandied about, I don't necessarily think are going to happen, but those are the names that I would probably have my eyes on more than anything. So Michigan needs a defensive coordinator, and then on top of that, they need to Jim Harbaugh has got to come in and kind of galvanize the place, right? Because with the way things just went, certainly there were coaches that were left in the dark. Some, it sounds like, were offered to come with him when he got what he thought was a sure thing, going to the Baltimore job, or sorry, not Baltimore, but the Minnesota job. So with those things, like, he's going to have to pave the way, right, for the staff, the players, anyone who suddenly felt blindsided. Now, the good thing is like he said, because he broke his silence with Mitch Albom, that when he talked to Mitch Albom, he said, like, hey, I was upfront about my intentions. So I think that goes a long way. That's probably the good news, is that, you know, there was the article that came out last week from Angelique that said, from Will Johnson's family, saying that, hey, he told Will, I'm gonna try my hand trying to get into the NFL. So with that in mind, that kind of forthright attitude probably is something that could help him out as far as that's concerned. Will he lose some people? It's certainly possible. I don't anticipate he's going to lose any staff members. I can't imagine that any players are really ultimately going to transfer as a result. From what he said to Mitch Albom, the players responded in such a way that, in saying, like, hey, we want to get to the NFL too. But, certainly he has to convince them that Michigan is where he wants to be, and get everyone back on that same page with that same level of enthusiasm as what they had last year. Otherwise, things can fall apart. And the annoying thing is if things do fall apart, you can really start by pointing at one person, because everything was kind of moving in the right direction until all of this happened. So there's really one culprit if things kind of look like 2020 again, and that would be Jim Harbaugh losing, having people lose faith in him. But so it's up to him to go in and rebuild. It doesn't sound like he's Costanza-ing this. It sounds like he knows that he's got to, that he has to rebuild some faith and rebuild some bridges and things of that nature. So that's exactly what needs to happen. And I think the other part that's good news is it's a long, long way to not even, I mean, it's not super long until spring, but I mean, it's still a long way till spring. And then it's even longer way to the season. And like I've been saying, by the time that we get to the season, as far as the inside Michigan part, this will be an afterthought. I don't expect that rival fans and maybe networks, I wouldn't be surprised if they're out there, trying to bring this up. I'm sure that recruiting-wise, it's going to be, unfortunately, it's going to be something that Michigan's going to have to deal with. We already saw Vince Marrow from Kentucky seemingly say his piece. It seemed like it was directed at Michigan, saying, like, I don't know why any kids would go there given all of this stuff. All right, whatever, man. You're at Kentucky. So I don't know what sour grapes he particularly has, but I know Michigan wanted him at one point, or it seemed like they did back when Jim was hired. Didn't go that way. So certainly they're going to have to face some challenges, and some of these are unforced errors, unfortunately. Michigan seems to tend to do things that way. But like I've said all week, and will continue to reiterate, the good news is the schedule. While things could certainly go a negative direction, I mean, you've got 3 cupcakes in non-conference. Now, Michigan still has to be focused. You saw what happened to Washington last year. They lost to FCS Montana when they were expected to be a potential Pac-12 contender, potential college football playoff type team. People had a lot of faith in what Washington was going to be able to do this last year, and then they lose out coming out of the gate. So Michigan still has to be focused. But you've got those 3 games that certainly, I mean, Colorado State, and I can't even think of the others at the moment. I mean, Hawaii, I know those are games that Michigan certainly should win. And then beyond that, then, you have that Maryland game at home. Maryland could be tough if they find a defense. But then after that, at Iowa, you got a couple weeks before you've got Penn State, bye week, Michigan State, and you don't have Wisconsin on the schedule. It's really a very favorable schedule. Got Penn State and Michigan State at home. The only tough road games really are Iowa and Ohio State. So if Michigan can get through that, got a really good shot. So, all right, let's continue on discussing the ramifications of all of this. Here in a moment. Before we do, hey, Built Bar, you know how much I love Built Bar. If you've been listening or watching the show for a while, if you don't know what Built Bar is, it's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. It is high protein, low calorie, low carb. It's everything that you want in a protein bar, and they're delicious. Like I said, they taste like a candy bar. My issue is I eat 2 at once most of the time, but the good news is compared to like getting a Metrics Big 100, a meal replacement bar, I still have higher protein and lower calories from it. So that's the great thing about Built Bar. So don't delay. Do like me. I've put my money where my mouth is. I've bought dozens of boxes on my own volition with my own money. I go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15. That's Built.com, promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off of your next order of Built Bar. All right, we're not going to spend too much time here, but we'll just kind of get through, spend a couple more minutes discussing the situation here in Ann Arbor. But I'm not that concerned. I guess that's the next thing that we should talk about is what is my feeling on this. I think it's a bad look what happened? Absolutely. And certainly I've had people that have come at me for that. I'm sorry. I think it's a bad look the way that everything went. I understand that that's not everyone's opinion. That's just my opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right, but I think it's a bad look, to go out and try to get the NFL job. And I know it's just kind of late in the cycle. It seemed like things kind of came up late. This wasn't a situation like with the Raiders where they were waiting for them to get eliminated from the playoffs and all of that. So the timing's not exactly ideal. Sounds like there was some facilitation that needed to be done with his former mentee, whose name escapes me, the new GM at Minnesota, and all of that. But it's one of those things where it's not a good look, but things still worked out for Michigan. And now it's just a matter of putting the pieces back together. There's certainly, in any job, you have moments where pieces need to be put back together, where things maybe don't go exactly ideal, or you have some kind of turbulence. and you just have to steady the ship again. So I'm not terribly concerned that there's going to be some kind of mutiny. And I think the big thing is that I think that the staff will fall right back in line, and that there will be that singular direction. And it's going to take spring ball to get there. It's going to take the leaders of the team to get there. You got to really look at Cade McNamara and Ronnie Bell in the spring. I know people want me to say J.J. McCarthy, and maybe that'll come. Maybe he'll end up being the starter. Who knows what will happen? Like I said before, I'm riding with Cade until proven otherwise. But you've got a couple guys that certainly have that mentality. But you also have to find some new leaders on the defensive side of the ball, because right now, when I look at it, there isn't any obvious ones. I mentioned yesterday Nikai Hill-Green, R.J. Moten seem like those types to me that certainly could be leaders. They just have that type of mentality in my eyes. But you're going to need everyone to be on the same page and pushing forward. I think that's what worked so well last year, is you had everyone on the same page. Everyone was pushing in the same direction. There wasn't any real fracturing. And I think that when you look at years like 2020 or even some of these other years, there's been a little bit of that. Not everyone's all pushing in the same direction. I think that they will get there because, listen, Jim Harbaugh clearly not going anywhere. So there's no point in fighting it at this point. Bruce Feldman said on the Rich Eisen show that they need to really hit the transfer portal. It would be nice if that can happen, but certainly we know the issues that exist with the transfer portal. But I would love to see them attack the defensive line, maybe the linebacker position, just because they're really thin there. I'm with secondary, a lot of young components, but I still feel like they've got bodies there. It's just a matter of getting them tuned up. Some of them are already on campus as early enrollees. And then you obviously have a lot of guys that have been through some of this. Jamon Green, DJ Turner, like I mentioned, Moten. You've got all these safeties. So I feel a lot better right now about the back end. I just really want to see that front end shored up a little bit more. Still very excited about Junior Colson this year. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We will see about, ideally, in an ideal world, I'd like to do a Purdue post-game tomorrow. I obviously will not be in West Lafayette for the game, so that might make it easier, but no promises because, of course, things are tenuous for me. But we will see how things go. But thanks for watching and or listening. Again, I appreciate your support. Just a reminder, especially if you're getting truculent about sports things, I said this the other day, there are bigger things than sports. There's a lot of other more important things in this world. Sports should be our release. So if they're making you angry, take a step back and recognize that there are more important things in this world. It should be something that galvanizes people, not the opposite. So thanks for watching and or listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.